Good evening, Dr. Robina Mohammad. My name is Jodie Mella, and I'd like to welcome you to the Islam UK Centre at Cardiff University. I'd like to ask you how you first became involved in your research.
I came back to university as a mature student and found myself in geography, which wasn't what I originally intended to do. And for my dissertation, I was obviously required to do some research. And the question that had always interested me was related to my own experiences as a South Asian Pakistani Muslim in Britain, and why the issues that I encountered, why they were the way they were, try and understand the ways in which that community operated in Britain in the 70s and beyond.
Right.
Wow. And so that's what I started to look at. I started to talk to young women, Pakistani women,
Right.
and took it from there, really.
Yeah. So where did you study? Was that in Plymouth or...?
It wasn't. It was in Reading.
Oh, right.
It was at the University of Reading.
Yeah.
I was an undergrad
Yeah.
and just started work on this project, and it developed, and I did my dissertation, and then people around me suggested that I rework it and try and get it published, that there was actually something there.
Yeah.
And so I did that. It took me some years to do it, but I did that and got that published.
Oh, wow.
And then some years later, then it all went quiet, and then some years later, after September the 11th, I had a lot of requests suddenly for more pieces from that, based on that particular research. And so that became quite a big project.
Wow.
I published quite a few pieces from that. Yeah. But in the meantime, I went on to do different things. I did something completely different for my PhD research, which was in Spain.
Wow.
Looking at gender issues in southern Spain.
In southern Spain, gosh.
In southern Spain,
wow.
and I had to learn Spanish, obviously, for that.
Oh, wow.
And then later on, I moved to Singapore and became interested in Bollywood's global visibility and did a project on that. So
really international.
Somehow that's how it ended up, really.
Yeah.
It wasn't that planned.
Yeah. So what is the research that you're working on at the moment, then?
That's a very good question. Obviously, I'd been asked to do a lot of to look at my original data and to give, I was getting requests from people to do work, to give them pieces on work on British Muslims, and particularly after the events of the early part of the decade. And I decided that yes, I need to get back to the field and do some more work on it. And I decided I was living in, although I was living in America, I had a place in Birmingham, and we'd lived there on and off, and I decided that this was the community I wanted to work in because it's one of the largest Pakistani communities in the UK.
Right.
And so I ended up getting money to go and work in that community last year, and I did a project last year looking at the ways in which this shift to a faith-based identity is playing out in the lives of Pakistani young people, second generation, in Birmingham.
Yeah.
So that's
what kind of methods were you using for this?
We used it's an ethnographic study, so we used semi-structured, in-depth interviews. And we also used observations we talked to people themselves, but we wanted to place what the interview data within the context of the people's family lives and their family background, their home space, as well as within the locality. So we needed to understand what was happening in the locality, what was happening at home, what was happening in the community to shape, and what was happening in the nationally to shape people's understandings and their experiences that they were articulating to us.
Yeah.
So we did. We the questions that we asked them were about their families and what was going on at home. We observed the locality, And we also talked to people at a community level to give
Right.
us some background to what they felt were issues facing the community that perhaps the respondents as individuals couldn't point us to.
Yeah.
So it's what they call research in context.
All right.
That's what I favour.
Wow.
To get a more nuanced understanding of people's experiences. That's really what I always try and achieve, and to try and get something of the richness, the complexity of everyday life that isn't as neat as, the discourses that you hear about Pakistanis or Pakistani Muslims or British Muslims, to try and understand those, to try and bring those out, that things that don't really necessarily fit always, but that are there. So hopefully I'll be bringing that out today a little bit.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Have you got any plans for future research? Oh.
I would love to take this forward. There's so many questions that are raised by this research, which we haven't, because as you're doing it, you can't really tell what's really going to come out of it at an overall level. So I really want to find out more. One of the things that came out of it was the ways in which what people feel about their localities and what people feel about Britain and how people are connecting to the sort of global Muslim world. Many people, for example, identified with other Muslim countries, not with their homeland country, which is what I expected them to do, but other countries like Dubai. Dubai was mentioned a lot. So I want to understand a bit more about where people are getting their ideas from, why people are, perceiving these places in the way that they do. And also, Birmingham's a very well-established, big community. And I think that has a big impact on the experiences of people within it. But then if you look at Bradford, it's got the people, the Pakistanis in Bradford are also from Azad Kashmir, are very similar, except that they're in a small community, and it would be interesting to do a comparison. Because a lot of people in Birmingham said that, when Bradford is very backward.
Oh,
so
right.
they call it backward, whereas people in Bradford apparently call Birmingham sort of modern and advanced. Not a nice thing. I have to say, it's not being advanced and modern in that sense is not seen as a good thing to be.
Right.
So there are these there are these kind of issues between them, because a lot of the people have got relatives living in Bradford and they have some experience, or relatives living in Birmingham. And yet these people are from the same localities in Pakistan. So I would like to do some work in Bradford to understand how the size of the community affects the experiences of that community.
Yes. Oh, that sounds wonderful. Thanks so much, Robina, for answering the questions, and I really look forward to hearing more of your research a bit later on. Thanks again.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me.